Okay, so first of all, thank you, Markus, for agreeing to this. And it's a great pleasure to have you as one of the minds behind the LIonWeb initiatives. And of course, for all the ones that are involved with language engineering, they know Markus. But for people that are new to this field, let me just share a couple of contributions that Markus has made. So first of all, this book, How to Understand Almost Anything, so very high bar. But the idea about this book is that you can use it to understand how to perform domain analysis. So in other words, how to understand how domain experts think, their mental models, their vocabulary. This is useful for a lot of possible goals, but one of them is to then implement domain-specific languages. And in that case, you can take a look at DSL engineering from Markus. So just to give you...
Although one has to admit that the DSL engineering book, I mean, it's 10 years old now, I think. So it's nothing is wrong in there, right? But obviously it's outdated a little bit. And there are also parts on language design, which of course I would write differently these days. But I mean, it's still, I think, good foundational reading.
Yeah, well, this will keep people busy while you work on the second edition at some point. So maybe not happening right now. Maybe I will ask
not happening
in a couple of years. Good. But about LIonWeb, so how did you come up with this idea? So why were you interested in starting this initiative?
Well, the thing is that there are lots of people, most of them are friends of ours, right, who have been working with mostly MPS in the last 10 years, but also other language workbenches like Xtext and smaller custom developed solutions. And all of this stuff has to move to the web. I mean, we all know that, right? The whole field of tools, IDEs, especially end user focused tools, which DSL mostly are, they have to be able to live in the browser and be good web citizens, meaning that the usual web standards, web conventions, idioms, look and feel are more or less supported. And MPS Xtext just isn't, right? So this means that there are lots of different initiatives that build some kind of MPS or Xtext-like thing in the browser. Some of these things have gotten to a point where they are useful. Others are still in more early stages. But the problem is these are all islands. And so that means that everybody has to build everything, which of course takes forever, considering that these are relatively small projects. And even assuming that everybody can build everything, the whole stack for language engineering, then these things are still not compatible. And if you want to use some kind of best of breed approach, you know, X person's editor and Y person's repository, then it doesn't work. So it's kind of obvious that in a small community like the language engineering community that needs to renovate their tech stack, right, to get to the web, that we need some level of interoperability for this to be fast and meaningful, fast enough to be developed and meaningful enough for users. And that's basically the idea of LIonWeb. Lion stands for language. There's actually two things: language interfaces on the web and language infrastructure on the web. It's kind of more or less the same, but the idea is to provide a bunch of, I mean, you know that, right? And you talked about it in previous recording, to provide this interoperability layer between the various initiatives and projects that the MPS ++ community is kind of developing. It's not intended to be MPS specific. I'm just saying that because it's growing out of this MPS world, basically.
Yeah, but if I understand correctly, you're saying it's not MPS specific, but it will permit to combine the best of MPS with the best of other tools and provide a richer solution.
Yes, one of the, if you will, participants or components that should be able to interoperate with, you know, in this LIonWeb world is MPS. Absolutely.
Good. So our experience with that will not be thrown away. Good.
It's like the old guys trying not to become irrelevant.
But that's a topic that I'm involved into a lot because of legacy modernization efforts. So.
Yeah.
And okay, so maybe my next question will be a follow-up on what you said, because if I understand correctly, you explain how these benefit, in a way, the user of a language engineering solution, because they can combine better pieces and reduce lock-in, and also make the whole effort of implementing these stuff more manageable for the different small vendors that are active in this area. But maybe expanding on this, how do you think that language engineering in general can benefit from LIonWeb? What actual results do you expect in the field?
Well, I said it before, language engineering and the use of language workbenches is a relatively small community. It has never, succeeded in becoming mainstream, and we've all had lots of discussions why, and we, depending on the numbers of beer people drink, I don't drink beer, but there's more creative reasons. But in the end, it just is too advanced, narrow, I don't know, whatever. But of course, to make it more relevant to a broader audience, if you can use in the front end more familiar notations and stuff that looks less like code language and more webby, but in the back end, you can still use, meta models and meta models and, homogeneous storage and queries and the ability to version your stuff and all these benefits that you get, type systems, analyses. If you can do that in the back end while in the front end kind of looking like a web application, then maybe the appeal of the whole approach broadens. The thing is, most of the people who have worked with language engineering and kind of model-driven approaches are pretty convinced that's a really good way to go. And that's not just true for, the evangelists and people who sell this stuff like me or you, but lots of my customers think that too, right? So once you understand this stuff and experience the benefits, people like it, but it's still hard to sell. And again, if things become more webby and look less strange in the beginning, then maybe that helps.
Makes sense. It makes me a little bit think about the ideas behind the subject matter manifesto, because you were talking about combining two different goals, or the interest of two different stakeholders, the people actually using the stuff and the people implementing the stuff. So
yes, I answered the question from the perspective of the end user, absolutely. And the reason why is the following. If you work with MPS now, and if you have overcome the MPS learning wall, as people jokingly say, then you live in a very, very productive world. Despite all the quirks and some of the bugs of MPS, it's a extremely productive tool once you've learned it. And it will be a long time until anything we're building now with LIonWeb or without LIonWeb gets to that point. So for the language engineer, moving to a web-based, more distributed LIonWeb-based environment will be a step back, if you will, right? So the argument why LIonWeb is necessary is really mostly from the end user. And here's this thing. Of course, with LIonWeb, it will be faster to build language engineering-based solutions for the end users. And because it's faster, this benefits the end users. But I still think if you look at it purely from the perspective of the language engineer, then you will want to stay in MPS because it's such a nicely optimized, garden. But again, that's not an option. So the argument for me is mostly from the end user perspective. And then, of course, transitively, if it's faster for the language engineer to build this stuff, then that's a benefit for the end user.
Yeah, no, I understand the benefit of having a complete solution and well integrated, but maybe also now sometimes one is forced to escape MPS because maybe they need to integrate with things like C#, Python, whatever.
Sure.
So that is
Absolutely.
hopefully will help also in that direction.
Oh, I absolutely agree, right? I mean, if you then can take an MPS language, add a bunch of LIonWeb salt and pepper, and then it comes out as a JSON data structure at the other end, and then you use a library implemented in C# that's already there from LIonWeb or in Kotlin for Java world, and you can directly load it. Of course, that's a huge deal. You can use MPS, for some tasks in your domain, and use custom built, whatever it is, Java, .NET, web stacks to do others. Absolutely a benefit. And you're right to emphasize that this benefit has nothing to do necessarily with moving to the web, right? You can just use LIonWeb as a way of accessing MPS models in a standardized way from TypeScript or hopefully C# and Java.
Good. So, given one key thing of this initiative is integration with different tools, can I ask you what integration, in your opinion, would be the most important to have in LIonWeb?
Well, again, from my perspective, anything that runs in the browser. So this might be custom Angular UIs, right? Some stuff that looks like dialogues and buttons and text fields and stuff, but still communicates with a language-oriented backend. Or, for example, there is by YOS and also by Itemis, there are projectional text. It's always hard to say. Projectional editors that use textual notations, right? So for editing expressions and stuff like that. And you could then imagine, well, it's been prototyped, you don't have to imagine it, a custom web application built with a standard technology like Angular, whatever you prefer. But then inside this web UI, there's one of these, input fields boxes where you have the ability to enter textual expressions with code completion. And the whole stack, the whole model, the expressions and the stuff around it, some of it implemented or edited by Angular, some of it edited with a reusable, let's say, Modelix text editor. All of this is stored homogeneously in the backend, and you can run type checks over it, right? So that is, again, that's for me, that's the biggest benefit. Currently working for a customer who has C# .NET in the backend and TypeScript in the front end. So there, the benefit would just be, there would be no Modelix, there would be no MPS. It's just a shared understanding of how models are described between the .NET and the web platform. So that's certainly absolutely also a benefit. It wasn't my main driver for kind of, trying to get this LIonWeb thing off the ground, but it's certainly also relevant. I mean, absolutely relevant. I have a customer right now, so yeah.
Good, and that is perfect because my next question was about how do you think that LIonWeb can specifically benefit you or your clients? But you provide already
yeah
example.
I mean, how does it benefit me? So let me add another kind of wrinkle to this discussion. I'm not as much as earlier, but I still act a little bit as an evangelist for this whole language engineering thing. I give talks, again, not as much as I did years ago. Somehow COVID, I don't know, made this less fun. Anyway, so I advertise for the approach, right? Not in a stupid way, but I explain why it's beneficial and why it's great and stuff. And then, if I get then asked, yeah, okay, it's all nice, but I need this in the web. And then I say, yeah, I understand, but there's nothing, right? And even if I can say, yeah, sure, use YOS's tool or use Itemis's tool, they're both open source. And then customer says, okay, fine, but I would like to combine these two. And I would say, it doesn't not possible. You know, so my point is that you can't sell the idea if this, again, small community isn't able to integrate, at least on a fundamental or foundational level. And so for me as a propaganda person about this topic, having the ability to explain that the community is actually doing something together in order to provide this interoperability is very helpful in selling the idea.
Good. And yeah, accidentally probably reduce also the risk of lock-in to some extent.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's why customers are asking for the integration. So totally, yeah.
Good. And can I ask you, what are you working on at the moment? Well, specifically maybe related to LIonWeb, but also.
Well, first of all, I'm not doing as much in terms of concrete coding as I would like to. Usual reasons. So I'm participating in the meetings and stuff. But mostly I'm working with one of my customers on this C# implementation. We're making good progress. I recently got stuck trying to bootstrap the meta model, because I ran into Stack Overflow exceptions all the time because the thing was trying to look at itself while it was building itself. And so it's surprised, put a bunch of knots into my brain, which still haven't completely resolved. So yes, that's currently what I'm doing. And again, yes, I should do more, and I apologize for not doing it, but I hopefully will.
But it's good to know that maybe one day there will be an implementation for C#, or I mean, at least that there is some work going in that direction.
Yeah, it's currently custom proprietary, but I'm of course trying to get it out.
Good. So fingers crossed. And can I ask you, what do you think we need to make LIonWeb successful? I mean, any risk that you see, or any things that could really increase our probability of success?
Yeah. We all have to work more on it. And no, I mean, and I say we, right? So I have the same problem. And honestly, realistically speaking, this only works if there is funding. I mean, people are working in their spare time, and some are doing more, some are doing less, and that's great, right? But many of the people involved here are freelancers, and they need, at least if they want to ramp up the effort, they need some kind of funding. So in my opinion, the biggest thing we need is, well, money, right? Basically customers essentially who are willing to spend some of the money on their particular consultant to implement these standards. I don't think that just doing it in people's spare time is a, I mean, it's not that people are doing nothing, but it's too slow.
Yeah, and as always, having a real case where to test out ideas also help improving faster. So
yeah, but that is, finding the real case is not so much the problem. I mean, I have customers where I can start this right now. It's more finding the money/time, it's the same thing anyway, to build the infrastructure far enough for it to be useful.
Good. Yeah, so if someone is watching this and want to invest in LIonWeb, they can add a comment to these videos wherever we publish it.
Yes.
Okay, so this was my last question. So thank you very much. I think it's been very interesting, and let's hope it helps us spread the voice about LIonWeb.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation. And